Have you ever had a moment in World of Warcraft where you come across some items that don't really look that interesting to you, so you sell them, only to realize much later on that you totally needed it for a quest or a raid, and now you need to backtrack and get it again? Yeah, I think we've all been there. And while I was thinking about these types of moments, I thought it would be fun to make a list of a few items you should hold on to throughout Classic WoW. Items that you now might think aren't worth a whole lot, but will prove to be worth a whole lot more later down the line. So, without further ado, let's look at 10 items that you should hold on to in Classic WoW. So, we're gonna start off the list with the Cold Rage Dagger. This dagger drops in Razorfen Downs and is a level 39 dagger that has a chance on hit to launch a frostbolt at the enemy, causing 20 to 31 frost damage and slowing movement speed by 50% for 5 seconds. So, if you're a rogue and you're still leveling, and you like daggers, you'd probably wear this. Or if you're a warrior, you might end up getting this by clicking greed when it drops. If you do, then do yourself a favor and hold on to this if you plan on doing AQ40. Wait, AQ40? Yep, this dagger is going to be very handy there, as Visitus is a boss that you need to freeze up. In order to freeze this boss up, you're going to have to apply frost damage, and being a melee with no frost damage spells, this is your only chance to help speed up the freezing process. What many people will do when AQ40 comes out is backtrack with their 60s to Razorfen Downs and farm that instance until they have a pair of these daggers. But if you just so happen to come across this item while you're still leveling, do yourself a favor and store it in the bank so you'll save some time later on. Moving on to the next item, which are Firefin Snappers. Now, Firefin Snappers are gained by fishing, and they are used for creating fire oil, which is then used by a tailor, for instance, that can craft some level 30-ish green gear with that fire oil. So you might think that beyond level 40 or so, it's not going to be of any use. Well, as it turns out, it's actually really damn useful later in the game. You see, not only is this used to enchant your cloak with plus 5 fire resistance, it's also required to create elixirs of greater firepower. And those will become pretty valuable once Ankiraj opens up and all the mages suddenly can go fire in PvE, instead of just relying on frost damage. I suspect that if you hold on to a couple of extra that you might have fished up, you'll definitely be able to make a quick few bucks once that elixir of greater firepower becomes a lot more sought after for endgame raiding. Next up is the Heart of Noxian. Now, if you're in late 40s and you're doing Maraudon and this drops, you're probably like, it's alright I guess. Until you realize that this thing is really powerful for AQ40. Yep, back to that raid again. You see, AQ40 also has a boss called Huhuran, and for that boss it is essential that you stack nature resistance, as the enraged phase will cause her to throw out tons and tons of poison bolts that do a lot of nature damage. So much in fact that you can't just rely on good damage and healing, you need things like nature resistance gear. And this is definitely a really good addition to that nature resistance gear you're going to have to farm, as not only does it provide plus 10 nature resist, it also removes one poison effect, making it even more handy. Another cool thing is that this isn't unique, so you could stack 2 of these to get plus 20 nature resistance out of just your trinket slots, which is not too shabby and will definitely come in handy when you're eventually going to kill that boss. There's also more nature resistance gear that drops in Maraudon, and I decided to give that a quick honorable mention here, as talking about each and every one of them isn't really that interesting, as they all do the same thing. They all have base stats with a bit of nature resistance that might come in handy when you need to stack up on nature resistance gear. Then we move on to the Solekeeper, a pretty simple blue staff with 26 spirit and 11 intellect. Now, it doesn't have to be this exact item, but I'm talking about basically any decent blue or green item you come across while leveling that has a lot of spirit. You see, while this staff might be, well, half decent for leveling, you'd probably throw this away once you get your hands on a level 60 blue staff with spell damage. Thing is, a staff like that with a lot of spirit still has its use at level 60, for mages. Oh yeah, you see, evocation in Classic works in such a way that it doesn't regenerate a fixed percentage of mana, like in later expansions, but rather drastically increase your current mana regeneration. Which in turn means that the more spirit you have, the more mana you gain back from evocation. And what do you know, you can actually switch weapons in combat. So, what do a lot of mages do? They use their regular staff when doing damage, and when they evocate, they quickly equip a staff with a lot of spirit, use Evocation, and then switch back to their regular staff. And in return, they will have gained more mana than just using the regular staff, with Evocation. So, if you happen to stumble upon this weapon while leveling and you're a mage, or any other weapon with a ton of spirit, hold on to that weapon, make a cool weapon switch macro for Evocation, and show the other mages how it's done. Oh, and if you want to be extremely baller, slap some plus spirit on that bad boy through enchanting, and get even more mana back. Alright, next up is the Manual Crowd Pummeler. Now if you're a feral druid, you probably know where I'm going with this, and well, you can probably skip ahead to the next item. For the people that don't know what I'm talking about, let me explain. So let's say you're a druid and you're leveling, you go through Gnomeregan, and that item drops. Now you have the dream of eventually raiding as a feral DPS druid. Well then, you better save this item and not throw it away, as the charges on this thing make this the best feral DPS druid weapon in the damn game. I've already talked about this item in a previous video, so I'll keep it short and sweet, but this item is definitely an item you should hold on to when you get it as a feral druid. Next item is the Frostwolf Trinket or the Stormpike Insignia. Now this is a trinket that, while kind of neat in Alterac Valley because of the recall, isn't really that mind-blowing outside of that battleground. There's many other trinkets during raiding or general PvP that will give you much better stats or abilities. However, this is another item you should definitely keep in your bank if you plan on trying to clear Naxxramas. Because for Sapphiron, the second to last boss in Naxxramas, you're going to have to stack up on a lot of frost resistance. And would you look at that, this trinket gives you plus 10 frost resistance. So while it might not be mind-blowing, it could definitely help you reach the required resistance for your class when it's finally time for you to try the Frostwing of Naxxramas. I know that it's still far away, and to a lot of people clearing the entirety of Naxxramas is probably not what they're looking for in Classic WoW, but it's still a pretty handy trinket for all you hardcore raiders out there. Okay, moving on to Mooncloth. Now Mooncloth as of right now, that is phase 2 before Blackened Lair, allows you to craft some pretty decent items. However, it will be later down the line that Mooncloth will definitely jump in demand on your server. You see, when Zul'Gurub comes out, you will be able to get reputation with the Zandalar tribe. And those, in return, will give you some pretty sweet patterns, and that means tailors are finally able to make the Bloodvine set. A super powerful set for PvE that provides a lot of extra spell hit and an absolute must for any caster trying to get hit cap for raiding. And what does this set need? Well, Mooncloth of course. So expect to see a jump in price when Zul'Gurub goes live, as a ton of clothy raiders are probably going to try and get their hands on these items. So if you have a few Mooncloth left from whatever, or some Felcloth, as you create Mooncloth from Felcloth, it might be a wise idea to hold on to those and sell them for some pretty nice cash when Zul'Gurub comes out. Next up on our list is Grave Moss. Now Grave Moss is a pretty low level herb that you mostly gather while still trying to level up your herbalism or alchemy skill in your late 20s and lower 30s. So you're probably looking at that herb and thinking, I don't need this anymore after I leveled enough, I can throw this away. But you couldn't be more wrong. You see, Grave Moss is a regen for Shadow Oil, which, when applied to a melee weapon, it gives 15% chance of casting Shadow Ball 3 at the opponent when it hits. I know, nothing to really brag about, but this Shadow Oil is also a regent for greater Shadow Protection potions. A potion that is going to be in very high demand when Naxxramas is out in your server, as multiple boss fights in that raid will probably require you to have a few stacks of these in your bags. So while right now Grave Moss might just seem like a bit of a throwaway herb, I expect they will definitely get a bump in price when Naxxramas will eventually go live. Now while that's still far away, it's definitely something to keep in the back of your head when you stumble upon some Grave Moss yourself. Turns out this is going to be a sought after herb for endgame raiders sooner or later, and for that reason you should definitely hold on to it. Next on our list is the Tempestria's Frozen Necklace. A necklace with 5 intellect, 8 stamina, and 15 frost resistance that drops off of Princess Tempestria in Winterspring. Now, without saying too much, I think you can probably guess why, as of right now, when this drops and you get your hands on it, you should hold on to it. Yep, that 15 plus frost resistance. And the cool thing is, it's a BOE item, so if you're not planning to raid clear Naxxramas yourself, you can probably end up catching a fair amount of gold for this on the auction house when the hardcore guilds are going to throw themselves at the last raid of the game. So, should you stumble upon this item, wait with selling it now and make a pretty sum of gold later on. Alright, and the last item on our list is going to be Elemental Earth. So what we have here is a white item that on its own doesn't really do anything. Now it is used for crafting some level 30ish green gear and the Robe of Power, which is a popular choice for tailors when leveling. So of course you probably think this is not worth much at level 60. Well, as it turns out, this is one of the things you need to craft greater nature protection potions. And yes, as you probably noticed, it's a bit of a returning theme in this video, where you need certain mats used for level 30 to 40ish stuff, and all of a sudden need it for endgame rating. But that's also kind of the charm that Classic has, having to go back to a lower level zone and go out of your way to find mats that you used to farm while leveling, and now you all of a sudden need them for endgame rating. And for the Elemental Earth, it's no different, because like I said, you need nature protection against Huhuran in AQ40, and nature resistance gear on its own is probably not enough, so nature protection potions are definitely going to be a requirement to get that boss down. So there you go, a few items that might not look very valuable when you first stumble upon them, or that might not have a whole lot of value right now, but items that you should definitely hold on to so you can use them in a later stage of the game. Whether it's for your own gear, raid consumables, or for some really good money making opportunities. I realize there's probably more items in Classic WoW that you should hold on to, and who knows, I might make a part 2 of this somewhere in the near future. For now though, I want to thank you for watching. I'm Hamster Wheel and have a good one.